It's Wednesday, it's WWT Live, and you know what that means, a full day of conversation, as today we're talking anniversaries, celebrations, and the new day is back, sort of. All of that and more on today's episode of WWT Live.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Welcome to WWT Live as part of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. I am Gerard Bonner. They call me the professor around these parts. I hope you are having an absolutely fantastic Wednesday. Smack in the middle of the week. Lots of things are going on, as always, in the space of pro wrestling. And we have a lot of news to get to. Like I said, we're talking celebrations, anniversaries, and it's a new day, kind of, sort of. We'll get into all of that and what that means. But I'm not alone, thankfully. I don't think you'd want to hear an hour of me by myself, but maybe you would. But in this case, you don't have to, because I've got hanging out with me DJ Chuck. What's going on, DJ?
Hey, man, an hour of you, I'll take it, man. I mean, pure commentary, bro. Like, give yourself more credit. Give yourself more credit, man.
You are being very kind. I need to remember that. So thank you, man. How you been?
Good, man. You know, hump day, get in the middle of the week, man. Just
absolutely,
you know, just getting it going over here and keeping it moving, man. Good to be with you guys as always.
Always a pleasure to have you with us. And of course, with us as well, he's got all the answers. He is Cedric, the entertainer, the answer guy. He does it all. What's up, Ced?
Happy I made it, man. You guys are stuck with me.
Hey.
We almost didn't make it, but you guys are stuck.
I'm not mad at that at all. How you been, man? You good?
I'm great. It's a Wednesday. Weather's not too bad. You know, it's a good week. It's a good week.
I resemble that, because Monday I literally got kicked off because the storm came and knocked the power out for a bit. So, yeah, I mean, literally we were about to go on and boom, the lights went out and it was crazy. But we made it back in time. And that was good. Lots of fun on that show. Shout out to JD. Good to see you, sir. And an hour all depends on what sort of sweet nothings you're whispering into the mic. Oh, boy. I'm not sure TK would want me to do that on this show. So, yeah, that...
Better charge the 900 number for that, man.
Good. Remember the days of the 900 numbers?
Oh,
I know that's
man.
It's a whole, you know...
Paul Heyman owes me $400, bro. Because I used to call the ECW hotline a lot in the early 2000s, charge up both my grandparents' phone lines with that. I had explained I needed these, these dirt sheets.
Well, no longer do you need to call the 900 numbers, because we've got all the news that you need. And we're going to kick it off, of course, with some big news about one of the members of the New Day. Tell us the latest on Big E.
Well, during the build-up and the lead-up to the SummerSlam media promotions, of course, one of our favorites got interviewed, and we want to know what's the status with Big E, so he gave us a little bit of update. He was actually informed that the doctors and physicians that have been in for the past year, because we're actually over the year mark now, a little bit over that since the original neck injury last March, and they're actually saying that he should not wrestle again. That's the doctor's recommendation. Now, that's a little bit of a somber news, everybody. If you looked on Twitter and you saw a lot of Ridge Holland hate just out of the blue, that was why. So it's possible that we might never see Big E in the squared circle again. One of the cool things that came out of that media presser is the fact that he was actually offered to do a color commentary role, a la, we saw some of Becky's quotes about that. And he said it's something he would consider, but he doesn't know how he would do it without a bathroom break. Now, I think if you remember in the past, we saw Big E and a New Day on the commentary table when they had their own separate desks with pancakes, stuff like that. Very entertaining stuff. I think anybody would love to see it. But how do we feel as a whole, as if this is the last that we see of Big E in the square circle?
I mean, I think we all can agree. First of all, we're just glad he's walking and he's healthy and can live a regular life, first and foremost. So there's the first, important victory there. Secondly, man, I would hope, in the days of, we were talking about this off air before we got on, of Bryan Danielson and Edge, I wouldn't 100% mark this off just yet. He may walk away for a minute, but the ways of modern medicine, we may see another wrestling miracle here soon. So we have to give it time and see how it plays out. Now, as far as his other roles in the company, that man is an entertainer. Big E is an entertainer. He could talk with the best of them. They could put him in any kind of role, and he would succeed in that company. So, and even when his in-ring days are done, when he's done, he's going to be continuing in the business. So, I hope this is not the last we've seen of him. I hope we do see him again in the ring. But Big E will be successful, as a mouthpiece. And I mean, that's the thing we know about certain wrestlers. They may not be the best mouthpieces, but they're great in the ring. Big E is a mouthpiece upon a mouthpiece. So he's going to be good either way, I believe.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are a number of great wrestlers who became commentators, and we see that really in a lot of other professional sports, where once their professional career is over, they move into the booth of commentary or doing analysis, and it really helps to extend their career. In the space of pro wrestling, I mean, my goodness, some of the absolute massively wonderful names that we loved in commentary were once wrestlers. Gorilla Monsoon immediately comes to mind. You think about Roddy Piper's stint. Macho Man Randy Savage had a stint as well. Mr. Perfect had a stint as doing commentary. Jerry the King Lawler, one of the most famous commentators, long time pro wrestling career. And even what we're seeing right now with Wade Barrett, Booker T, so there's definitely
Corey Graves.
Corey Graves.
Nigel McGuinness.
Yep, Nigel. I mean, like Excalibur, there are a lot of, and we see Jericho jumping in there as well. Taz. So there's, as we're naming literally a lot of the modern day commentators that you are hearing were former pro wrestlers. And there is a degree of credibility that a wrestler automatically has when they walk into the commentary booth, because you've actually been on the field. You actually understand, and you can give a degree of analysis that someone who's never been in the ring may not be able to do. So that's certainly a path if that is something that he's interested in. One of the other things that I noticed is he's been doing a lot of mainstream media for WWE. He did the Celebrity Family Feud. He did The Weakest Link. He's those. And again, you were talking about personality. That's a great space for him. So it really
he's at the Raceway too.
Yeah. He's done something with NASCAR, with college football.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I want to say to this story too, this is off topic but on topic, about Rich Holland trending on Twitter, X, whatever the hell it's called these days.
Yeah,
we've got to stop. Look, getting hurt in the ring is just part of the game. You got to charge it to the game. It's not like Rich Holland did that on purpose to hurt him. People have got to stop, charging. Like you can't bum rush a wrestler on Twitter, say it's your fault, so and so can't wrestle anymore. I think that's just terrible. I'm trying to find the appropriate words without using profanity here, but that's just such a sore mark for fans to do. I don't like that. Yeah. I think that's tacky, and I think it's just it's never a good look. I don't like that.
Yeah. Most wrestlers will tell you that they are the ones that are the most hurt if they are ever in any way connected to injuring another wrestler. So, it is certainly never an intentional kind of thing. And you're right. I do hope that fans can, and it's kind of weird because the sport, first of all, if we would just acknowledge 100% that this is a sport, then 100%. We could more likely accept when people get injured, because we don't do this on the basketball court, on the football court, or in any of these sports that involve direct contact. We don't attribute blame to somebody else, but in pro wrestling, on one hand, there's the argument, well, am I being worked, or is this really happening, et cetera, et cetera. And then when you realize it's happening, you can't go and run and blame people. I don't think that that's fair. People forget that Rich Holland himself had a horrific injury in NXT where his leg was literally broken on live television. You know what I mean? So, it's unfair. And again, it happened because somebody fell on him over the top rope. So I think people just have to to get better with that. And I think really that's where voices like ours become very important to really counteract some of the low level thinking that can happen out there in the sport, because I do think it's kind of crazy to see they are lighting it up in the
Sidebar:
comment.
I'll never forgive the Shanahans for what they did to RG3, but that's just me. That's
Oh boy.
just me blaming the coaches. So,
Oh boy.
but I was going to say, if I look back just a few months ago during WrestleMania and Wale Mania that was out here, if you're familiar with the event, they actually surprised E and gave him his flowers that day. They did a video package. Everybody gave him well wishes. And overall, I don't think he didn't expect it, but some of the superstars that were there on stage with him, they were genuinely excited just to see him.
Yeah.
There was so much love. It can bring a tear to your eye, like how happy people were to see him. I think it was Jimmy Uso's first time seeing E in a long time since they were traveling on the road together. So people were just very happy to see him. So as a collective, as a fan of this sport, people should just be happy that not only are we seeing him move around actively on social media, but that he is popping up in so many places. Right. So he feels comfortable being in the public spotlight again.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that, because there can be a degree of anxiety that comes with the idea that maybe you can't do what it is that you once did. And for some, it doesn't put them in a good place, but I'm glad he's in a good place. So let's see. Boza, good to see you here. He says, for Raw, imagine not going to the bathroom for 3 hours or PLE days, or 3 to 4 hours, depending on pay-per-view. So I'm going to speak to that. I am a guy who does commentary. The shows that I work usually are about 2.5 to 3 hours, where we usually don't get a bathroom break. And so as one who drinks a lot of water, I can tell you that I just kind of prepare for that particular day. My water usually happens on the front end of the day, and I usually try not to do a whole bunch with that during the time that I'm out there, because there really isn't a smooth way to just kind of sneak away and run and go do that. Now, you know, in the case of a WWE where now let me explain this, at least in the space of WWE or AEW, there are commercial breaks. And during the commercial breaks, you know, you can at least, if there's, depending upon how close the bathroom might be to where they're sitting, there might be the opportunity, keyword might. But in the case of what we do, you know, we are taping for television, but we don't have commercial breaks in what we're doing. So we don't have that. So if we get an intermission, perhaps, but like, for instance, the last show we just did last Friday, there was no intermission. So, you know, it was like, okay, you know, just kind of keep rocking with it. And yeah, so you learn.
I feel like in time when the commentary desk was near the entrance, it was more easier than now being like by the ring in front of the fans.
Yeah, like my thought is, if they were going to do that, hopefully there is an out on the floor, depending upon the arena that they could go to. But I'm sure, again, because it's a public one, you know, I don't know if they could have security at least get them there. But again, you have to walk pretty fast if you're going to do it in a 3 to 4 minute commercial break. The other thing that could work in a space like that is somebody could literally cover for you if it's a 2 or 3 man booth. And Lord knows in an AEW space where it's a 4 man booth, I mean, somebody could certainly cover for you while you handle business. So those things.
Never thought about that. Maybe that's why they do that.
Yes.
Didn't JR say at one point during those WWE shows they used to have a bottle by the booth in that same? Because I remember him talking about that on his podcast. Or am
I don't doubt that, considering, you know, when you're older, obviously you're not going to be able to run to the bathroom or anything like that. So I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt that at all. Let's see. JD says Big E is a physical freak. I hope his genetics heal up, regardless if he boots up 100%. Again. Yeah, honestly, I could see him being a manager for New Day since New Day returned to tag team action. That wouldn't be a bad move. Cool Gamer, good to see you. Eric, no matter if he comes back as a wrestler, manager, or announcer, it's great to have Big E back. He certainly is a presence. There's no doubt about that. Let's see. Boy, there are so many great comments here. Ron, good to see you. Good friend, good cousin, good to see you. Let's see. Bobby says people should stop disrespecting Ridge. I agree. Boza says, I think New Day is one of the most popular acts in WWE history. They could go in the Hall of Fame. They will go in the Hall of Fame. That's a given. With that said, this is probably a good time to mention, since he mentioned Big E, and the New Day, while we got this news on Big E, we also found out Monday night that we had the return of the New Day. Chuck, tell us about that.
So New Day returns on Raw on Monday. They took on the Viking Raiders, picked up the W. This has been, as Kofi's been out with is an ankle injury for the last, I want to say, a couple months now.
Yeah,
5 months.
5 months. Wow. So it's the first time back on TV together. They pick up the W. Both look in great shape. I was actually expecting, when I heard that theme song, I thought he was going to come out with them. I didn't expect him to be in the ring, but I expect him to be, a mouthpiece on the side. I think maybe we'll see that in the future. Mm-hmm. Good to see those brothers back in action. Well needed. We need more tag team, like solid tag teams in the division right now. So, and also the best cosplay in wrestling, may I add as well. They always come with the fire outfit. So it's good to see the New Day full back in action, and let's see who they take on next.
Yeah, it was a big win. And I thought, given all that the Viking Raiders have done lately, it was a really, really big moment for the New Day to come out and beat them at this particular point.
I thought for sure for a minute, I thought Viking Raiders was going to take it when Woods took that splash off the top.
Yes. Yes. I got very nervous. Very, very nervous.
That looked like that hurt. So I thought the match was over there. So when Woods kicked out of that, I'm like, oh, they're going to go over tonight.
Yeah. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling for sure. Seth, did you get a chance to see their return?
I did. And I saw it like after the fact. You know how you watch the results on Twitter and you're like, oh, wait, that happened? So you're like more eager to tune in. Right. So like, I didn't know this was going to happen. Kofi's been out with ankle injury. He actually posted a video on his Instagram earlier today about the journey of the ankle surgery. Some very graphic footage there of the scars and getting the stem done. Like, it was probably a very arduous process. And then to get back to the point where he can still do the things that he wants to do in the ring, that's very beautiful to see. Very curious to know how this is going to affect the tag team division with so much going on. We have the angle of the champions actually being hurt. What's going on with the Prophets and Bobby, and the Usos are now no more. So it's like there's like it's like the perfect timing for a long storied act that's very consistent to kind of enter back into that flux. But it's curious to see, are they going to like split the titles, or what are they going to do? Because whenever the New Day are on, they're on, and it's consistent, and it's always worked.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's odd that now seemingly both sets of tag titles, the women's and the men's, seem to be in a bit of flux. Kevin Owens, of course, is out. If you looked at Sami Zayn's elbow, something is very wrong.
So if you noticed that at the beginning of the show when they did the promo segment, it was like that earlier. It was like that the whole time.
I hadn't paid attention to that, but it was very, very clear when he got beat up, and I was like, oh, that's not a good sign.
It looked like a baseball was in his elbow. Like, there's going to be some – I don't know if they're going to do a tournament. Clearly, KO and Sam – and it sucks because they've had a hell of a year, especially leading up to Mania. They're going to need some time off. KO's been wrestling beat up for a while. I think even at Mania, he was wrestling hurt. So they're going to take some time off. I don't know what they're going to do with the titles. I know it's going to be a tournament situation. I don't know what they're going to do with the women's either. With the women's makes me sad because it feels like they can't stick it. Like, it's always something comes up with those. I don't want to say those titles are cursed. I don't want to say that, but it's just been one bad thing after another. I just hope they can figure that out soon. But I will say, we talked about the Street Profits. I love what I'm seeing. I just want to say that real quick. I love it. This is the route they need to go. I'm digging what they're doing with the Profits with Bobby Lashley.
Yes, is a very, very good time to be the Street Profits. Said,
I was thinking back to the New Day. Since we're seeing so much Big E, and I think the company's being very cautious with him as how they present him. He's doing more appearances outside. Would it hurt so much to have Big E do the traditional New Day entrance on Monday nights? Would that cause too much like anticipation?
I don't know. I part of me wonders. I think there are two things. One, I do think it's interesting that Big E has not appeared inside of an arena or anything like that, and I wonder if that is kind of his decision in terms of saying, "Hey, being too close to this might do some things to me that I'm not, emotionally or mentally ready for."
Right.
So that could be a part of it, because we've seen other people show up while injured, still be around the ring, still be on television, things of that nature. So I think everybody's impacted differently. But I think he's got such goodwill with the company that whatever he wants to do at this point, they would allow him to do. So I think it's really up to him. I do.
I think also he doesn't want to give up the notion to the audience because he doesn't exactly know yet. You don't want to give it this hope of he's going to come back to the ring and then we find out it's not going to. So I think he wants to figure out exactly what's next. Am I going to return? Am I not returning? Before he kind of makes that decision, which is understandable. And Gerard, I think you're right. He's got the liberty at this point to take time to figure it out. And I think whatever he decides to do, WWE is going to run with it.
Absolutely. Some more comments. Jeffrey, good to see you. Speaking of New Day, make sure y'all check out Up, Down, Down Summer Games. We'll definitely have to do that. Bobby says, I'd like to see New Day versus Imperium. That'd be a fun one. That'd be a really fun one. And there was definitely something going on with the elbow. So Boza says it looked like Sammy might be dealing with a weird staph infection. That's exactly what I thought it was. Okay. It's exactly what I thought it was. I agree with Gerard. Both sets of tag titles are cursed. Now, I don't think I said that either tag team titles.
I said I don't want to say they're cursed, but they just been having bad luck. Let me clarify.
Yeah, right there. You know how you flip that cursed angle towards a positive is if you just put the titles back on Isla and Alba and say that they cursed the previous champions, because that's like
I think that's actually brilliant. I think that's brilliant. You know, it's also ironic we haven't seen them since that tag team unification match. So to me, I think this would be a perfect time to bring them back and insert them into that picture. Let's see. Will says, who would have thought the New Day would outlast the Usos without turning on each other? Knowing Vince tried, but those brothers stayed strong.
That's
for sure.
Within their contract, I believe, at this point.
Yeah. You know what? And it says something, because you could really make the argument that they are the longest tenured faction, I believe, in wrestling history, because the Four Horsemen's run didn't last this long.
No,
not continuously. The Four Horsemen's run, their first run ran about 2 to 3 years. And then Tully and Arn left to go to WWE. And then eventually Flair would leave. And then they try to reform it. And, but there really has not been a faction that has been continuously going. These guys have been going for a solid decade.
Yeah, I think on the Summer Games, they were saying they've been like 9 years in this thing.
It's crazy.
That is crazy.
It doesn't hurt that they move mad merch. They're not gonna mess up that money.
When you demonstrate how to speak the language of the company, they'll keep you together doing whatever you need to do, which I think is such a massive win. And speaking of the language of the company, it seems as though the voice of WWE is this guy, Michael Cole, who Endeavor has said that, hey, they want him pretty much as the voice of WWE. So, of course, this past Monday night, he returned to Monday Night Raw. He and his former SmackDown partner, now Raw partner, are on Raw. That's Wade Barrett. The Raw commentators of Kevin Patrick and Corey Graves are moving over to SmackDown, where Michael Cole will be as well. Now, in case you didn't know, Michael Cole has been in the business now for 25 years.
Wow.
And according to Booker T, he says Michael Cole really wants to slow down. He does not want to have to do this for a whole lot longer. So according to Booker T, it's a possibility that, Michael Cole wants to wind down. So, and in his words, he says, I don't know how long this is going to last, but I do know that Michael Cole is a team player. He is a soldier, and wherever he's needed, he will step up to the plate. So I guess the question to ask now is, obviously Michael Cole has worked into an amazing spot where he is the voice of the WWE. But here's the real question I want to ask. Not so much how long is this going to last, but if you watched SummerSlam on Saturday, you heard his commentary partner, Corey Graves, call Michael Cole the greatest announcer of all time. We had this conversation on this show a couple of months ago, so it's time to revisit it. Now that Endeavor has deemed Michael Cole to be the guy to be on both Raw and SmackDown, and his voice is consistent, and he's had 25 years in the game, do we agree with Corey Graves that Michael Cole is the greatest commentator of all time? Or do we have other thoughts on that? I want to get your thoughts in the chat. Let's go to our illustrious panel. DJ Chuck, what do you say about this?
Well, first of all, when Cole got that news about more work, he said, "You got to be kidding me."
Yes.
You got to be kidding me. And quickly, he does want to slow down. He was on Pat McAfee's podcast a couple months ago. So when I saw this news that he was getting more work on his plate, I was as surprised as anybody too. But again, Cole's been a team player for 25, 26 years since he was getting clowned in the back, by DX doing talk about started from the bottom. Now we here. So Cole, to me, to your question, is he the greatest? Not in my book. Is he one of the greatest? Is he top 5? Maybe you can make that argument. I think it depends on the generation you grew up on. It's just like basketball. It's just like any time. It's just like basketball. It's just like hip hop. When you're like, who's the greatest top 5 MCs? It's all about, who is the greatest from that era. I mean, for me, it's Jim Ross. It's gonna be Jim Ross. That's just my 2 cents, and that's just the era I came up in. But there's no denying that Cole is undoubtedly top 10 at this point with his consistency.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I will say I believe Michael Cole is on the Mount Rushmore of commentators. He's been doing it across different eras. When you think about Attitude Era, Ruthless Aggression Era, and to now, and how much impact he's had on certain superstars that we've seen mature, grow up in different eras, things like that. I think he is a staple of the commentary booth, which is why. And another thing is reliability. You can always count on Michael Cole to give his best to kind of capture the moment that's going on, to play that role, whether it be positivity or heel. What's interesting about this quote from Booker to me, he also says that he feels like Cole will never get a chance to wind down and retire because he said he's waiting on them to give Vic Joseph a shot from NXT. Right. If you watch NXT, Vic is actually very good. And he's really stabilizing that third brand for NXT. So yeah, I think Cole is absolutely on the Mount Rushmore. But when I think about the other people, when I think about Jim Ross making so many moments over the years that just encapsulates the era of wrestling we were in, especially with guys like Stone Cold. And I'm thinking, like, who is that wrestler that is personified by Michael Cole's commentary? I'm pretty sure you can name quite a few.
Maybe Cena? Maybe?
Yeah, maybe Cena is encapsulated by Cole's commentary. And if you think about Michael Cole, like, he spans so many eras of wrestling. When you say 25 years, that's crazy because I'm 36. And I think about Michael Cole being a backstage commentator when he still had the highlighted tips and stuff like that.
Right.
And then you think about the anonymous general manager angle that he was in. He was a part of a lot of big parts of history with this company. So it's no surprise they say, like, hey, here's old reliable. Let's go to Michael Cole instead of, like, let's groom the next generation.
The only thing I have a problem with this move is I'm not a fan of 3-man booths. I'm just not. And even with AEW, when it's 4 people, I'm just like, who is talking? Like, I'm not the biggest fan of that. I understand why they want Cole to because it's SmackDown now. It's a 3-man booth because they've switched it. That's the only thing I'm not a fan of is 3-man booths. But I don't want anybody as far as like Patrick's been great. I don't want anybody to lose an opportunity. And quickly to Vic Joseph, I think he sounded great when he was on Raw in 2019. I was surprised when he moved him down to NXT. So, but I think he's gotten better down there. He's had more time to cut his teeth. So I think eventually he should get his shot.
I want to ask you guys, we've got a number of great things that are being said in here. So I want to just touch on them really quickly. Boza says the commentary changes their way of saying Kevin Patrick sucks. Yikes. Cole and Wade have great chemistry. I'm shocked that they haven't brought up Vic Joseph to the main roster. Ronell says JR is still the greatest, which I can understand that. Bobby says Michael Cole is great on commentary. Boza continues, Cole has been the only regular face for the last 25 years. I think he has been good because he had the right partners. That's interesting. Before Pat McAfee came, he was just blah. JR is the best. That is
Nah, you can't say that just because he like I said, he encapsulates moments. And somebody's mentioning Bailey. Like, if you are a commentator that gets to be a part of the show,
Yeah.
like when the wrestlers interacts with you, that speaks to like your prominence in your arena.
Also, I can argue that some of Cole's best work was with Taz.
Yes,
I can argue that. Yeah,
we cannot forget. I think here's part of the challenge with the Michael Cole conversation, and then there's another question I want to ask. One of the challenges with the Michael Cole is Michael Cole also was doing his work while we had JR in his prime, while we had the combination of JR and Jerry the King Lawler in their prime. So for some, if you grew up in the era where you saw JR in his prime and a young Michael Cole, sometimes it's hard to flip the switch and watch somebody. It's almost like watching, and I'm not calling Michael Cole a child, but it's like watching a child grow up into an adult TV star. If they've been in front of you the entire time, it's easy to keep referring to the. It's part of what happened with Jaleel White as Steve Urkel. You know, in his case, because he played Steve Urkel so well, we never gave him a chance to evolve into some other character. You know, in the case of Michael Cole, we've watched him go from backstage announcer to, commentator to, being in almost the shadow of JR to then kind of being in that space where he was the most tenured, but people may not have called him the voice yet. And so now we're here and we're at 25 years. And like you guys were mentioning before, things evolve generationally. So today's generation of wrestling fan may not have heard JR in his prime. Yeah. This might be the most consistent voice they heard. And I want to be very cautious and careful and say that if they are hearing JR now, they aren't hearing as much of JR, and they aren't hearing JR as in his bag as he was during the day. So it's almost like and I'll probably, some people may not know this name, but he's a Hall of Fame name, Gordon Soley.
Oh yeah.
If you did not catch Gordon Soley in his prime, he would end up just being kind of a name to you that's revered, but you don't know why he's revered. You know what I mean? So it's all interesting. So I want to ask another question, and I'm asking for multiple reasons, but I think this is an important question. And this is for everybody. So someone mentioned, and I think it was you said that, or it might have been you, Chuck. So it's one of you guys, that you would not want to see someone new miss out on an opportunity because Cole is still there. Right. So the question now is, what does it take for you as a wrestling fan to become comfortable? Better yet, how long and what does it require for a new voice to become comfortable with you when in the space of commentary?
That's a great question.
Ooh, that is tough because it's an adjustment period.
Yeah,
it is an adjustment period.
It's time.
Mm-hmm.
It's time and in seeing and giving them a chance.
Mm-hmm.
The Raw booth has had so much turnover in the last 4 years. What's the name of homeboy that they had from MMA that they released last
Mauro
year?
Ranallo.
No.
Smith.
Like, I feel like when he was starting to get his groove, they let him go.
Mm-hmm.
And Mario, Mario's a whole nother discussion.
Mauro,
Mamma Mia, another discussion for another day.
I love Mauro.
Fan club over here.
Yes.
Yes. But I think I forgot who said in the chat, they're just not giving people time. I don't know if it's a Triple H thing. I don't know if it's a Vince thing. They're just not giving people time. And if you look at the history of commentators with that company, it's never been kind of a golden baton. It's kind of somebody didn't show up or somebody got fired. Hey, can you do blah, 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 this Monday? That's what happened with Jerry Lawler. Randy Savage left for WCW. Vince didn't have anybody that day. Jerry, do you want to go in the booth with me? Look what happened. you know, and the same thing kind of happened with JR coming over from WCW and so on and so forth. And then Michael Cole stepped in when JR was first out, was it ball palsy the first time?
Yes.
Around
yes.
98, 99.
Mhm.
So people getting their shot was kind of by, it was a do or die situation. Either somebody steps up or we have nobody in the booth. Now, I can understand, like, obviously you want vets in the booth, but you got to, I mean, this could be argued about the company as a whole. You got to groom new talent. You got to groom new talent for storylines, wrestlers, commentators, backstage personnel, down to whatever role you have. And I think that's just an issue in any kind of corporation.
Yeah.
When do you start grooming the next generation? And Cole seems like a giving person. He doesn't seem like a person that's, you know, trying to be protective of his spot, because he works with all the commentators and oversees all the commentators, and he's very giving with his knowledge. So I don't know if it's up to him, or I don't know what his deal may look like now since he has all this extra work. But like I said, hearing him on Pat McAfee's podcast earlier this year, it seemed like he was winding it down. So I think he is keeping his eye on starting to groom who is next, but it looks like, you know, TKO, I guess we'll call it now since the merger. Looks like they have other plans.
So, Said, let me pose that same question to you. How long and what is required for you to become comfortable with the voice of a new commentator?
I think the biggest one is time, because the reshuffling of parts is going to happen all the time. And I can't tell you how tired I am of hearing champagne wishes and caviar dreams on Tuesday nights. And I really miss Wade Barrett on Tuesday nights, but I understand why he was moved and how he excels with red or blue brand. Now, according to I think the reshuffling is a lot to just allowing Kevin Patrick to not have so much on his plate with the 3-man booth, and I understand that. But as far as elevating new talent, things like that, I feel like I can see the moves as they're happening. I mean, I feel like sooner rather than later, we're going to get Kayla Braxton at the desk, because she ended her last episode of The Bump last week. Right. So we're going to see more infiltration of these personalities, things like that. Maybe Byron Saxton comes back to a commentary role. But me personally, I think the 3-man booth works best.
Okay.
And really? I think because it allows you to have 3 different personalities, and somebody doesn't have something to go, or maybe somebody's uncomfortable with expounding upon their personality and character, it allows everybody to kind of freely be themselves. And I think it worked best in NXT when you had Beth Phoenix there.
Yeah.
And I think let's just start doing more of that. And it'll help that talent ease into becoming the next Michael Cole of tomorrow. And I feel like that's what Michael Cole wants too. So maybe a lot of this pressure on Michael is because, like, hey, we got this new deal coming up. We want to go with all reliable just so we can usher in this era comfortably. But I feel like they'll ease into elevating new people. I don't think Kevin Patrick is bad. I think it's just we're so used to like the pomp and circumstance on Monday Night Raw over 3 hours that when you hear something more slow and steady, we don't know how to adjust.
Interesting. I've got so many thoughts. There's some great comments here. Jeffrey says Mauro Ranallo was great. He certainly was. Ron, very kind. Thanks. Or that's why I'm eagerly awaiting the big screen debut of the Professor. I appreciate that, and we're working on that. I promise you we are. JD says amazed Mick Foley never went to the commentary booth. Well, actually, he did go to the commentary booth
briefly.
He was briefly on SmackDown doing commentary, and he was also very vocal about why he left that role. He did not like Vince McMahon in his ear regularly. Those are his words, not mine. He ended up going over and doing some commentary over in Impact for a little while as well, before doing some on-screen things there. Macho Man and Roddy Piper were great with Vince, as was Jesse Ventura. Yes, they were.
Yes.
Totally enjoyed them. Let's see. Boza says they reshuffled because prior to SummerSlam, Corey has always felt like the lead man on Monday. Kevin never had the confidence to lead the show. JD says Braxton will be a great addition. She can roll with the punches, push a little back, but overall seems comfortable with improving for sure. I will say this, for me, and I think everybody looks for something different relative to commentary. I believe that the job or the role of a commentator is to, for one, tell a story, It is to educate the viewer on not just storyline, but why what you're seeing in the ring is important. I think it's one of the reasons why JR would spend a lot of time sharing stats and figures and, historical information about whoever is in the ring, so that you understand, okay, why this person is important, where they've been, all of that type of story, to kind of build and hype that thing up. So I believe information is important, knowledge base is important, confidence vocally, those things are important. You cannot sound uncertain. You cannot sound, like you don't know what's going on. Even if you don't know what's going on, you sound like you know what's going on.
Right.
And I do believe that somebody in the commentary booth should also be the voice of the fan, should say what the fan is thinking, and that means they need to be a fan themselves, which I think, in all fairness, has been some of the disconnect for some of the people who they have brought in, WWE specifically, who they have brought in from other sports, who were not as connected to the sport of wrestling. And so there were certain things they just couldn't translate with, because they weren't connecting in that way. This is probably another conversation for another day, but I think this is a lot of fun. And there are lots of...
You're spot on about that.
Yeah.
When somebody's not a fan of wrestling, you can feel it. It exudes in their
totally
speech.
Feel it. It's kind of the difference. Remember, they brought a couple of years ago, they brought a guy in from baseball whose name I can't remember.
That's what I thought you guys were talking about.
Yeah, they brought him in, and he didn't last long, because you could tell.
What's home? I remember now. I can't remember.
Treating it like baseball, but he wasn't treating it like wrestling. And the wrestling fan, is different than a football fan, is different than a basket. Adrian Verk, Adnan Verk, that's his name.
That's right.
He didn't last very long. And so I think gosh, there's so many other things to get to. I'm sorry, TK. But I think one of the things that's so interesting about this conversation is it's the part of pro wrestling that few people talk about, but everybody needs. When commentary is bad, it immediately changes everything. The best comments, if you go back and rewatch, for those who lived through the Attitude Era, go back and rewatch some of the matches of the Attitude Era. You'll discover it wasn't as good as you thought it was. What made it good was the commentary, And so I do believe there, that's why I focus so much on commentary, because it's super important in terms of what it can do to help push a story along and make things work well.
That's why you have guys who are not watching Monday Night Football on your regular networks, because they're tuning into the Manning cast and they want to listen to Marshawn Lynch and Richard Sherman call the games, because it's more engaging, because you have people that play the game and because they're also fans. It's not as dry, diluted. So to your point, you go look at them Attitude Era matches. Not a lot of them hold up. You're not going to be spending your day watching Attitude Era matches. It was JR restored to fill in the moment.
Absolutely.
That's why when people hold on to that era so closely, I'm like, how?
They don't realize what they're holding on to. That's the crazy part. They're holding on to JR, and they're holding on to outer segments or out of ring segments, but you're not holding on to great matches of the Attitude. We talk about, Austin promos, Rock promos, all of those types of things, but we don't talk about amazing matches from the Attitude Era, which is just super interesting.
And to your point, Gerard, I mean, even if you don't watch a full match, everybody watches a lot of those Instagram wrestling accounts. When you go to a video, there's a lot of times when it's on mute.
Yeah.
And you already hear the commentary in your head. It's part of the moment.
Yes.
Look at WrestleMania 17. Edge diving off the ladder and creaming Jeff Hardy.
Right.
You can't see that moment and not hear that call in your head.
Right.
But to connect what we've been talking about today, these commentators are not allowing a lot of time to build chemistry. That's why they don't sound as good.
Yeah.
JR and the King had chemistry.
Yes.
But if you keep switching out people, and I think that's why poor Renee Paquette didn't have a chance. Yeah. I felt like they didn't allow her to gel, or you had Cole kind of teaching, you had Graves she was kind of middle between Cole and Graves, and she was fighting to get a word in. And this is why I'm not a fan of 3-person booths. If you're in a 3-person booth, to me, it's like the basketball drill, a 3-person weave. You have to rotate the ball consistently, or you're going to get bopped in the head with the ball. So
the way I look at a 3-person booth is like you look at the NBA on TNT. It's like you'll have Mike Breen for your astute journalism and making the big calls. You'll have Jeff Van Gundy who will give you the stories and from my time coach and stuff like that. And then you have Mark Jackson who will give you more relatable information that relates just to the fan of the sport. I think you just have to have those three, the chemistry, like you said, the personalities have to mesh. Everybody has to know their role when doing their job in commentary.
And it's interesting. The last thing I'll say is, this kind of goes back to an earlier point that Boza made about chemistry, and he felt like we saw the best of Cole when he had the chemistry with Pat McAfee, which I think is just so interesting to look at that particular point. Okay, now we mentioned the differences between sports in terms of, basketball audiences are not football audiences, are not wrestling audiences, are not boxing audiences. And one Logan Paul has come to acknowledge that particular fact, that in his words, wrestling is harder than boxing. He had that to say in having some conversations, and he went on and said this. He says, quote, "It's like Broadway on steroids. Like everyone in the WWE is so athletic and so talented in a different way that I would have never expected. And I find the mental part of WWE way more taxing than boxing." And so to that end, I am grateful that for as irritated as some of us can get with Logan Paul, it's very clear that he has a strong amount of respect for the business. And that is always a very good thing. Boy, we've got a lot to try to 10 minutes. Good God. All right, let's see what we can
I just say that calling Logan Paul a boxer is like calling me a swimmer. and that's what pisses me off about that quote. I'm glad that he has appreciation for wrestling, but we got to stop this, man. We got to stop with this Logan Paul having one like knockout power or being a puncher. We saw him fight.
Boxing hasn't been the same. Boxing hasn't been the same since HBO took it off, and I'm just gonna leave it at that. That's short on time.
Then there's that. Okay, so a couple of quick anniversaries and celebrations to talk about. For one, congratulations to Mercedes Mone, who yesterday. What did I say? Yesterday, celebrate. I was trying to say yesterday it celebrated. Yesterday, she celebrated her 13-year anniversary in the wrestling business, which is pretty amazing. And considering all she has accomplished, what a career. So congratulations to Mercedes. Another quick celebration. Dark Side of the Ring last night aired their 40th episode in the season 4 finale, which, by the way, if you guys didn't watch that or have not watched this season of Dark Side of the Ring, I highly suggest that you do. Last night,
Marty
about this guy.
I haven't watched the episode yet, but if you've kept up with Marty Jannetty's stories over the year, I'm sure it was I
used to be such a big Jannetty fan growing up.
Let me tell you something. I think it's safe to say that of the Midnight Rockers or of the Rockers, however you saw them, Jannetty was the guy. Shawn Michaels was kind of the second. Jannetty was the guy. So it was kind of crazy to see that Shawn Michaels became the superstar,
right?
And Jannetty became an adjective. So I will just say this, guys, it's a can't miss episode. Boza is on it. I don't know how they fit all that they did about him into an hour, but they did. It is one of the most intense, informational kinds of shows. Wow. Just amazing. This season was incredible. They talked about Junkyard Dog this season. They talked about the infamous
Bash at the Beach 2000.
Bash at the Beach 2000.
Bam Bam Bigelow was good as well.
So many good ones.
Candido and Sonny.
That's how they kicked it off. So some great episodes. Abdullah the Butcher, Adrian Adonis, Magnum TA.
Yeah, Magnum TA was a big one.
Go back and check those out. And since we're talking anniversaries, today is also the 24-year anniversary of a moment that, well, I don't think we'll ever forget. Said, you want to talk about this one?
man, just hearing these like exorbitant numbers just got me feeling old today. But
That
this
is a
was
problem.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
this is the 24-year anniversary of Chris Jericho's WWE debut. If you remember, Jericho was tasked with interrupting The Rock, and look, my man floated because this was a very tough moment when The Rock
Yeah.
comes at you and says, "Who the hell are you?" And
Yeah.
you're on live television on the biggest show on network television. You have to swim. But everybody remembers this, and everybody remembers all the vignettes that happened in the lead up to this, all the countdowns. And this was the big countdown where he finally made his debut. I can't believe this was 24 years ago.
Yeah. I can't either.
One of the greatest WWE debuts of all time. And then have the task to go nose to nose with The Rock on night one. That was like you said, sink or swim. He could have been, if Jericho would have flubbed that, he'd have been at catering immediately.
Right.
And he swam. He Michael Phelps that shit.
Yeah.
Rock was burying people on the mic back then, like
burning.
How dare you have the class to interrupt The Rock on his show and not even have the class to introduce yourself? What is your name?
And that's really where we got that whole it doesn't matter what your name is. And geez, just I don't even know that we realize. It's funny, obviously, for those who had followed Chris Jericho, you may have followed him from the ECW days or even his WCW days. But I don't know that many realized that it would be here that would really start Jericho's transformation into a megastar.
right.
And here it is 24 years later, he's still going strong. And, I think
God, that's crazy.
I know. It's hard to believe 24 years ago. But what's even crazier is there was talk somewhere either in the chat or here on the show about, starting a new company and wanting to go with trusted voices. I believe that Chris Jericho really helped to cement AEW as a valid new company.
Absolutely.
When they launched in 2019, it was, him showing up at that press conference that made people go, oh, okay, this isn't just a Young Bucks, elite kind of thing. They got Jericho. It's obviously why Jericho became the first world champion and why he's still continuing his career there in AEW. So congratulations, of course.
You can't have a Mount Rushmore and not have Jericho on it at this point.
There's no
Just
wizard.
The reinvention, the longevity, the being at the top of each company you're at different periods of time. Like, he's a master of reinvention.
There's
no Ocho, there's no wizard, there's no demo guy, there's no little bit of bubbly. There is none of that without the Ayatollah of rock and roll. There's none of that without Y2J. This was his career making moment. We wouldn't have any of this if he would have effed up that promo right there. This made his career.
I agree. And so last but not least, one of the other things that happened on this particular day, oh gosh, I'll just throw this out there, is something called Showdown at Shea. Now, you may not recognize that name, but on this day in 1980, this housed a match that was kind of a WrestleMania precursor. It was Andre the Giant versus Hulk Hogan at Shea Stadium in 1980. It predated WrestleMania 3, of course. By the time we got to 1987, Vince McMahon Jr. made this a whole new world, and you didn't even know Showdown at the Shea existed, but it really did, and I talk about it more on a separate podcast, but definitely wanted to mention that. Tonight, very, very quickly, is episode 201 of AEW's Dynamite. It's going to be a stat card, including the Hardys and the Young Bucks on free TV. What is life? That's happening tonight, guys, so definitely check that out. And
must see TV, man.
Is this just first in-ring action back?
No, he's been
second or third match, I want to say.
It's second or third. He's had like a 6-man tag and things like that. So we've got that happening. RVD is also wrestling tonight for the FTR championship. No,
FTW.
Got too many FTW, too much in my head. Okay, that's happening tonight though. So as well. So it's going to be a great night. And it's funny, little history for you. It was 6 years ago where they had this match. the Hardys would lose like the Ring of Honor tag titles to the Young Bucks and then show up the next day at WrestleMania. It was pretty crazy to see how all that goes down. So
that's 2016.
We stuffed
the Conquest of Gold.
That's right. That's right. We
Conquest of
stuffed
Gold.
a whole lot into this hour today, and what an amazing conversation we have had. All right, we've got to get ready to get out of here. Some more shows are coming. DJ Chuck, let the people know how they can reach out to you.
You can find me on Instagram at the Old Soul HFP. Check out my band On the Floor Productions, YouTube. Check out our album, The Black Odyssey. All our music videos, and a quick little tidbit about Dark Side of the Ring, which is also one of my favorite shows on TV. You can catch a cameo from yours truly on the Nick Gage episode if you look close enough in the crowd.
Ah, nice. I have to go back and watch that one for sure. That was a bloody one too. Good
yeah.
It's Nick Gage. Which,
yeah.
What do you expect? So that's awfully cool. Said, man, how can the people reach you?
Find me on Twitter at says. Find me on the threads and the IG at said is the answer. I dropped an article a couple days ago for dailyddt.com covering SummerSlam this past weekend. You can also check out my journalism journey on IG as well as Hawthorne Community Television. We didn't get a chance to talk about it, but WWT Field Trip, AEW Full Gear is going to be at the Forum.
Yes.
Be at the Forum November 18th. So any wrestling fans in the LA area that want to pull up, hang with WWT, I'm pretty sure we'll be in the building at the Forum.
100%.
I'm pretty sure of that. That's going to be super, super cool. Of course, you guys can check me out at Bonafide across all of the social spaces. You can check out my commentary work. That's probably why it was so fun to talk about commentary today. You can check that out with Southern Honor on IWTV. Our new show should be coming up very, very soon. Also, you can check out my work with Battle Slam on Fight TV, my work with The Nightmare Factory on YouTube. And I mentioned podcasts. I do have a pro wrestling podcast called The Faction, where we're talking about a lot of fun stuff. We're talking about Showdown at the Shea today, so you can go back and check that out wherever you check out podcasts. And since the DJ Chuck is plugging a project, I'm actually on a project as well, a new project that just dropped on Friday from Indie Tribe. It's called Low Blow. You can find me on track 7.
Yes, sir.
It debuted at like number 2 on the iTunes hip hop charts on Friday, and number 8 on the iTunes overall chart. So definitely go check it out. Lots of fun. Shout out to everybody in the chat. There's a whole lot of folks who really made this pop today. Boza and Jeffrey and Eric and JD and Ronell, and gosh, I feel like I'm missing people, but there were lots of things happening. Bobby was in here and a lot of other folks. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to what we are doing here at Women's Wrestling Talk. Remember that you can follow us at WW Talk Pod across all the social spaces. Lots of great content there, and there's lots of new content coming from SummerSlam as well that you can check out. Also, brand new website up for www.talkpod.com. Check that out. You can find lots of great things happening there. And of course, we have a show for pretty much every brand of pro wrestling that you might like, and that is available here on the network as well. WWT Live will be back on Friday talking about more of the latest and greatest in pro wrestling news. So on behalf of TK Trinidad and the entire crew here, I'm the Professor Gerard Bonner. This has been WWT Live as part of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Hey peeps, TK Trinidad here, boss lady of Women's Wrestling Talk. And I want to say thank you so much for watching, because you've got millions of options. Plus, you don't have to worry about sharing your password to check us out. But while you're here, hopefully you know we have so many more shows to watch, like Turnbuckle Glam, Raw Post Show, WoW Post Show, AEW Dynamite Post Show, Women's Wrestling Army Post Show, NXT Post Show, Impact Wrestling Post Show, AEW Rampage and SmackDown Live Post Show, On the Scroll, ROH Post Show, WWT Live, plus all of our interviews with the hottest women's wrestlers in the game. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our website at www.talkpod.com and follow us on all social media platforms at www.talkpod, and make sure to spread the word. That means send this to the group chat. Yes, even the person with the green bubble. Thanks again so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao for now.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.